Welcome to the Taylor Made Tasty podcast. I'm Taylor, retired serial quitter turned goal boss coach, speaker, and consultant. I believe a beautiful life starts with a beautiful mindset. Join me as we amplify confidence, resilience, and actionable tools on the road to quit quitting on you and your vision. You are worthy of your goals, so let's go get there. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Made Tasty, the podcast. Today I wanted to discuss what is personal development anyway, right? It's sort of this buzzword, we hear it, we don't really maybe understand what it means, how it's applicable to our lives. So I wanted to discuss how to create a personal development practice that works for you and serves your goals and your needs. And we are going to do that today with Mariana Jimenez, an aspiring physician and self-development journey aficionado. She is the host of the Committed to Growth podcast, where she is on a mission to inspire others to embrace their journey towards becoming their ideal self by making their journey unique to them. She also helps listeners stay accountable and inspired as they make their transition into becoming the best version of themselves that they aspire to be. Please help me in welcoming Mariana to the podcast. Hi, Mariana. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It is so lovely to be here.
Yes, I wanted to have this conversation because I think personal development is such a buzzword that if you aren't in the space or quote unquote get it, it is something that people just think maybe you buy a self-help book and your life is going to be healed, happy, and perfect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I really wanted to get into what is personal development and how can listeners create a plan or practice that works for them and their goals. Okay. So I wanted to first see if you could describe what personal development means, or like what is known as personal development.
Yeah, totally. No, I love the question. I love that you bring up that it's like this conventional thing of if you're not in it, then you're not worth anything, or if you're not in it, then you're not becoming what you're supposed to be, which is so false because I think that it's something that is so individual for everybody. So the way I see self-development is kind of twofold. So if we're talking along more the conventional lines, yes, it is developing the skills and habits that you need to become the version of yourself that you want to be, whether that is in your professional realm, whether it's in a personal realm, social, spiritual realm, whatever that looks like. But I also see it as unbecoming the things that are preventing you from being that version of yourself. So that can be instilled limiting beliefs, subconscious blocks that you may have. So I see it as building, but also knocking down, if that makes any sense.
Yes, absolutely. Unbecoming. I love that word. No, that definitely makes sense, that it takes both, right? So it's just like,
yes,
when we're trying to build good habits, we have to sort of eliminate the less than stellar or / bad habits in order to build the good ones. So it is, and that's such a crucial point. That's beautiful. I love the way you said that. That it is like, it's about what we want to be, but it's also about what we need to maybe eliminate or create boundaries around, or just like work on this other side. So I've seen it personally. And in many people around me, that creating a personal development, self-development practice truly can change your life and accomplishing your goals. And that is what myself and my listeners are all about. Like, let's crush them goals, right? Yes, so can you give some examples of what would be included in a self-development practice?
Yeah, totally. I think what you have to define first is, what is your trajectory, and how are you defining that trajectory based on the vision that you have for yourself of who you want to be. So for example, if you because we're recording a podcast, I'll just go with this example. So say you've never recorded a podcast before. Maybe you see yourself as being really shy. You're not really confident in your abilities to speak publicly, but you really want to be a podcast host. What qualities define the identity of a podcast host, and how can you start integrating those things into your own identity? So you need confidence, you need to be well articulated, you need to be educated on what you're talking about. So what I like to do is, instead of going all in and just saying, okay, I'm going to spend every day reading for 3 hours about self-help, right? Because that's kind of what I talk about. How is that something that on a micro level I can integrate into my daily schedule? Because I think that what a lot of people conceive is that with a self-development practice, you're supposed to be having these breakthroughs like every single day. Like every single day you unbecome something, or every single day you become more confident. And it's not, right? It's the compound effect of multiple trial and errors. It's the compound effect of actually committing to the things that you set out to do for yourself every day, right? So on a daily level, that can be, I like to think of it as approaching self-growth from the realms of spirituality, mindset, and physical health, right? When you kind of approach growth from that holistic viewpoint, you're more likely to succeed because you're touching on all facets of who you are. So on a daily level, maybe you commit to be it journaling for 5 minutes or meditating for 5 minutes, going on a walk. And where the growth comes in is, well, are you committing to those things that you set out to do for yourself, right? Because that in that commitment and in that discipline is a lot of growth, because you're not always going to want to. There's that saying that goes, you're not always going to be motivated, so you have to be disciplined. So commitment and discipline is a huge aspect of that for sure. And committing to continuous learning, I think, is a big one too. The Greeks, I believe, I read this in a book a couple of days ago. It said that the Greeks who created school, their word for school meant leisure, because they saw learning as something that is recreational. It's for fun. So on a daily level, on a weekly level too, how are you educating yourself? How are you looking outside of yourself at what other people are saying, at what other people are doing in the realm that you're trying to improve in, so that you can improve as well?
Yeah, I think you just touched on a really big point, is that when you think personal development or self-development, I think maybe some of the only times you think fun are, if you're in it, maybe those conferences that everyone goes to, like a women's conference or something like that. Yeah. And that sounds fun, and they can be transformative, right? But like if you're on the outside of it, none of that work sounds fun, because you're having to reflect on who you are and get really vulnerable and honest and create radical responsibility if you want to actually see that change. So I think, the concept of how can you bring fun into that is really deciding on, in the realm of self-development, what is it that you like to do? Like you touched on the journaling or meditating.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge part of it too, because I think that we only see, I guess, the more conventional things that are now defined as wellness or self-development, which are, and I use them, so I apologize for staying narrow here, but, journaling, meditation, but there's so many ways to get that fulfillment from other things that are maybe less conventional. So, there's, for example, I meditate because it's what works for me, but I know people who do tapping or yoga because that's their way of getting centered. And if I do yoga, it's because I want to stretch, not because I find it useful for entering a space of mindfulness. I can use running for that, for example, which is maybe less conventional. So I think what's super important is that if you find yourself not feeling like the more conventional definitions of, be it health and wellness, align with who you are, or you're finding that you're struggling to adapt them for what you need them for, then it's totally fine to explore other things or see how the daily things that you do in your life can be that practice for you. So I know a lot of people who, well, not a lot of people, a few people who treat washing dishes as like a mindfulness practice, because, washing dishes, you're washing away the dirt and you're cleaning something, right? And that is a metaphor for meditation or mindfulness, kind of what goes on in your soul. So it's okay to not, be a yogi like a lot of people are doing nowadays. It's okay to do something else as long as it's bringing you that fulfillment and the growth that you need and want. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, because there's such a sliding scale and there's no one way to do it. I mean, I have clients that get up and listen to trap music in the morning, and that's like what brings them into their day and creates being present in their life. Is like, I'm in this moment, I'm dancing it out, and that's what I'm doing. Or it looks like walking outside barefoot just to be grounded, like one with the earth, right? And so it's deciding that there are so many different ways to do it, and that it doesn't look like one lane is, fits all, basically.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that you run outside of your podcast, so I don't know if that's something that you found to be something that helps you with mindfulness, or how that has contributed to your growth journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's such highs and lows, honestly. So it's just in moments you can have runs that are like, oh my gosh, I'm so present, I'm so here, I'm so capable, I'm so strong, all of that. And then other days that feel a little bit more tough, you're like, okay, I just need to realize that this journey is mine. And regardless of it looking different than people around me, that I'm still doing the damn work. And so that's what sometimes But yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely, because why else would you do it? I mean, running is crazy. Running is hard. It's like you have to have a purpose outside of just putting one foot in front of the other that creates, mindfulness and awareness and just like being present in your day, in your life. And it's definitely a clearing too, where if you do feel overwhelmed, it is as simple as one step in front of the other sometimes, and you're just like, let me do this, because I can control this and I can't control everything else around me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, and I love that you brought up the point about how it is very highs and lows, because I think that's another thing that we don't see often, at least when we're seeing other people promote their self-development practice, is that it's not by any means linear or exponential, right? There are a lot of highs and lows, because especially as it pertains to the unbecoming part of it that we mentioned at the beginning, right? You are going to start doing the inner work. You're going to start realizing things about yourself that you've had buried within, be it beliefs, be it emotions, that are going to surface, and some days are going to be better than others. But I think that's where the daily commitment piece really comes into play, because as soon as you ditch it, because you feel yourself resisting change, that's a huge part, right? Our minds shift into comfort when they start seeing or feeling that things are changing within us, right? If we start trying to change a limiting belief that has been comfortable for so long, however, it may have held us back, it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to have days where you really just want to shift back into that mindset, but you have to tell yourself that it's okay, that it's uncomfortable. It means that change is happening, and you just have to, subject yourself to the discomfort little by little, not all at once either, because that can lead to a lot of discontent. So
right. Yes. That's a great point, definitely, because even if something, like you were saying the examples earlier of journaling or meditating or yoga, when you go into yoga that day, one leg might feel tighter than the other, or it might be like, oh, I can't do this pose as well as I did yesterday or last week. Or the same thing with journaling. I have no idea what I'm supposed to write today, or I don't, I don't feel these prompts, I don't feel these affirmations or whatever it is. And it's just like that changes day to day. And it doesn't mean, as you mentioned, that compound effect isn't happening. It's just that some days are better than others, and that's just factual.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And we're human and everybody's journey is different. So as long as you're kind of focusing on your own path and that it feels good to you, rather than focusing so much on comparing yourself to what you're seeing online, because that is only a fraction of what goes on in real life, you're up for success ultimately.
Right, definitely. And that's one of the big things that I teach in my coaching is like about quitting and those days where it does get hard, which makes it easy to quit, right? We're like, oh, well, this, I've been trying this for a week, or I've been trying this for a month, and I can't do it, or I can't do it the way I want to do it. And it's just like when those bad days hit, it's how do you avoid that feeling to quit and just lean into it anyway. And a lot of that, which kind of brings me to my next point, is that I do want to acknowledge that at first personal development can feel really just sort of like weird and foreign, and you're just like not really sure am I doing this right, because you're being forced out of your comfort zone and to confront areas of your life that you want to improve. And experiencing growth can be really scary at first.
Yeah.
And so how do you think listeners can like easily ease into creating a self-development practice that works for them? Like bare minimum, what can they do?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's huge, and I'm glad you brought up that point because I think it's something that throws a lot of people back, and it's something that I hear a lot. It's like, well, I've been writing 3 things in my journal that I'm grateful for, but it's not working for me. Like I don't feel the expansiveness. And it's like, well, I think the first thing that you have to realize when you go into this journey is that I guess I like to see self-development and self-discovery as the same thing in a way, in the sense that as you're building your habits, building these skills, you're going to start discovering things about yourself. And to tie that back to the point that we brought up earlier about, not being afraid or discouraged if the conventional methods of health and wellness aren't working for you, to not be afraid to tailor them to what your needs are. And so I think that the first thing you have to realize is that this whole process is going to require you to be adaptive all the time, because you're going to feel lower on some days, you're going to feel higher on some days you're not going to want to meditate, some days you are. And so how can you make the most of what you've set out to do for yourself with what you have in that moment? So maybe you meditate for a minute instead of your planned 5 or 10. So to shift that back to your point here, not to shift too much away from it, is entering with the knowledge that it's going to require creativity and innovation on your part to get into something consistent that feels good to you. Now, to start really small, think about the areas of your life that you want to become better at and how those intimate parts of yourself seep into your daily tasks. So, for example, if you want to become more confident because you want to meet more people, you want to do more things that are outside of your comfort zone, how does confidence seep into your daily life? So maybe in your professional job, you would like to take on a leadership role. Maybe in your friend groups, you want to start stimulating and encouraging your friends to, be better versions of themselves. So establish just one thing, one trait that you really want to hone in on and figure out the why behind it. Because I think that that's huge. Without a reasoning or a rationale behind why you're developing the thing that you want to build, you're not going to have a sense of direction. That why is your sense of direction. Then, if we're starting super small scale here, what is one thing, one practice that you can bring into your day to help you start discovering what that means for you? So confidence, I think we see it on the conventional level again, is like somebody who's not afraid to speak in large crowds and stuff. They do things that are outside of their comfort zone constantly. But what does that mean for you ultimately? And what does that mean for how you want to show up for the people in your life? And how can you establish one practice that helps you do that every single day? One small promise. So for building confidence here, to start really, really small, maybe you commit to telling one person in your office that they did a good job that day, that you're seeing the work in the progress in their work. And then that can progress to things like sending, I'm trying to think of a better one here, but having like, I don't know, like a support group within your office space for people to give
or
each other
hosting
good feedback.
meetings.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So commit to starting as small as you can to not overwhelm your mind with too much discomfort, and then start, building up from there once you've established the foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the concept you're kind of saying is almost work backwards. So if you're
Yeah.
talking about what is the trajectory, what is the end goal, right? And that's like
Mm-hmm.
everything that I teach is like, okay, what is the end goal? And then how do we break it down? So now we're
Yes.
looking for attainable steps in that. And that doesn't mean you
Mm-hmm.
have to check every box. Like you said, if you want to be more
No.
confident in crowds or confident at work, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that meditation needs to come into your life, or that you need to
Mm-hmm.
read this certain book, or it's like, again, staying in the lane of what your goal is in that personal development. And
Mm-hmm.
sure, holistically, all of those things have a place in your life and they're going to make it better. But if you're getting overwhelmed and bogged down by, oh, I have to keep this perfect personal
Yeah.
development schedule, and I have to read 10 pages a day, and I have to listen to this podcast, and I have to, do this meditation and journal and all of these things, it's like, well, let's pay attention to what's actually moving the needle. And if that
Mm-hmm.
is you taking the big goal and then breaking it down and figuring out what does the path of self-development look like for you, that also creates like, we need to be very self-aware of what's working and what's not working. And so
Mm-hmm.
often we go through our days and we're just like, floating around, and we know we don't like this, and we know we don't like how that feels, and we know we, feel low energy, and we're tired, and we're making excuses and all of these
Mm-hmm.
things. We know it's happening, but are we really aware of it? Are we really paying attention to that pain, reflecting on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then creating a plan to progress from there? And so I think a
Yes.
lot of that is like, we just need to be very self aware. And then
Mm-hmm.
that starts
Mm-hmm.
the easing into it. Is once you
Yes.
can create that self awareness, because one, you know how you are in this moment, so you know where your starting point is, and two, you know where your end goal is. Being self aware means
Mm-hmm.
I know what I want. I'm just maybe not sure about how to get there, and I might need help getting there, and I might need help breaking down the steps to get there, but I'm aware of where I am and I'm aware of where I want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in that, I guess, that trajectory between the where I want to be and where I am now is, like you said, recognizing what has stopped you from getting to that end goal before. So if you've tried to take on a more leadership position in your role, right? What has stopped you from going for it in the past? And what are those fears? What are those limiting beliefs? And how can you start taking them apart using your mindfulness routine, or sorry, your self-development routine? So maybe affirmations is something that you can work on, maybe journaling on it, or doing yoga to release that stuff. I think self-awareness is a huge component of it, because then once you can recognize that kind of the comfort that you're walking through in your day-to-day life is hindering you, but what is keeping you in that comfort is key to start figuring out what you need to work on to get to your desired end goal.
Right, absolutely. It's like the why. If we have to have a why to motivate us, we also need to have the why behind each thing that we're choosing to bring into our self-development practice. So we can't
Mm-hmm.
just decide, oh, I'm gonna do the meditation, I'm gonna do the cold showers, I'm gonna do
Mm-hmm.
this book every day. Like, we have to know, why is it that that thing is going to help you get to that end goal, right? Like, what is
Yeah.
it bringing into your life? Like, for example, the if you're saying, affirmations, do you understand why our thoughts, our energy follows thoughts? Do you understand that, or are you just saying affirmations to say the words out loud? We, really
Yeah.
understanding the connection between your end goal and your practice that you're putting into place.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge one too because I think it's more than doing, it's like embodying. And I allude to this example a lot. I'm a huge fan of Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear, for anybody here who's familiar with it. And James Clear really enforces the idea to develop a habit, you have to tie that habit to an identity that you want to embody. So if we're the one that he commonly uses throughout the book is people who want to start running to be more motivated and more fit and more
Mm-hmm.
disciplined. Well, you don't to actually bring that into your life and make it stay and make it something that's important to you, you need to figure out a way to make that habit something that's intrinsically motivating to you, which comes with also figuring out the why behind it, comes with figuring out what's keeping you from it. So, what he alludes to is instead of making your goal, I want to run every day, change it to, I want to be a runner. So then, based on what you know about people who run often or people who run as their professional practice, whatever that may be, what are again, it's like working backwards. What traits do they embody? What daily habits and practices do they implement into their day that you can maybe start considering tailoring into your own life or looking at what they do if there's something that you don't like or something that doesn't align with what you want to do? How can you adapt that to who you are? I think there's a beauty in recognizing that you get to write the formula that's unique to you as well throughout this process, which is where that creativity and that innovation comes in. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, such a good book. Highly recommend. 10 out of
Yeah.
10.
Mm-hmm.
Um but yeah, and you actually triggered another thought, that it can take a really long time for you to feel like the personal development plan is working. Like, the
Mm-hmm.
practices are actually giving you the outcome that you want, right? And so you just
Mm-hmm.
brought up a point of saying, tying it to your identity and saying, I want to be a runner. And I
Mm-hmm.
had been, just to give my own personal example, I had been running for almost 4 months before I felt like a runner. Like, where it actually
Mm-hmm.
felt like it was part of my identity and part of like who I am. Like, I felt confident in saying, I'm a runner, I run,
Mm-hmm.
but how much mental mindset and beyond the physical, but all of the
Mm-hmm.
mindset work that went into running and the goals and breaking it down and doing research and understanding my why plays
Yeah.
into that. But it sometimes it takes time to actually feel like this personal development is working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is the work that has to be done to overcome those subconscious blocks or to ditch past identities, because before you probably didn't see yourself as a runner, but now that you've done it consistently, now you can say that you do, and that was you again becoming that version of yourself, stepping into that identity, which takes a lot of work. And I think telling yourself that you have a right to uphold the identity that you want for yourself, even if it doesn't always feel completely like you're completely embodying it, that's okay. Like, as long as you're doing the work to adapt to it, to embody it, to step into it, it's going to come over time.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Okay, so on that, we're saying, oh, it's gonna take time. But what if, you know, I like I like an actionable, like realistic, attainable tool. If we were to recommend one simple thing that listeners can implement today towards their personal development journey, what would that be?
I, for going really simple, I think set, wake up every single day and set an intention for how you want to feel at the end of the day. Like every single day, wake up and either for a minute, like all you need is a minute to do this very simple thing, right? You can think about it, you can write about it somewhere you see it. Just set an intention for how you want to feel at the end of the day or something that you want to accomplish that day, because then you're starting your day with a commitment and a trajectory for how you need to be in your day to then feel like you want to feel at the end of it. So if you wake up and you say at the end of the day, I want to feel satisfied because I finished all the work that I had to do, or if we're talking like on a task level, or I want to feel uplifted as an example, then what are the things in your day that you are working towards that will make you feel uplifted if you do them? So to allude back to the example we were talking about earlier, tell your coworkers that they did a good job on this particular project. Go for your run, even if it's for 5 minutes, if you're just getting into it. Once you set that intention, it guides how you act throughout the day, and you only need 30 seconds to a minute to set an intention if we're going really simple. So
Beautiful. I love that. Yes, you can do that. And honestly, you can do that any time of the day, right? So if you are listening to this in the middle of the day, you can still set an
yeah,
intention, or
yes,
set an intention before a tough conversation, or before you're going into speak in front of a crowd for the first time. Like all of those things that it's easy to say, I want to feel X, Y, and Z. I want to be X, Y, and Z. I want to walk away from this with X, Y, and Z. And so I love that. That's very easy to implement. Maybe the words might not come to you right away, but we all have an idea of, if I'm going for this thing, if I'm walking in this room, if I'm writing this email, what is it that I want to feel? And so being able to voice that and say that is part of personal development, because we want to start calling our shots and saying
yeah,
what we want and how we want to feel. And the how you're going to get there isn't always clear, but knowing that you are empowered to call your shots, I think it's a big part of that. And setting an
yeah,
intention for the day is doing just that.
yeah. And I think that if at the end of the day, you didn't feel or finish or do what you had set out as your intention, then in the process of asking yourself, okay, why don't I feel this way right now? You can figure out how to be better the next day or the day after that. So it's not just setting yourself a trajectory, but then something to reflect on at the end of the day once you've done it.
Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. All
Mm-hmm.
right, Mariana, I would love for you to share about your business and how listeners can connect with you.
Oh, yes, thank you. So you can find me on Instagram and Spotify and Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast virtually. It's the Commitment to Growth podcast, and on Instagram it's at Commitment to Growth podcast. So if you are an ambitious overthinker who wants kind of what we were just talking about here, actionable self-development practices, then I'm your girl. That's what I'm here for. So you can visit me on Instagram and Facebook. It's at Commitment to Growth Podcast. That's where I spend most of my time. My TikTok is Mariana Jimenez. It's on my Instagram for you to check out as well. And website is in the works. So hopefully by the time this is updated, I have one, but you can find it in the link on my Instagram. So that's where you can find me.
Fantastic.
Come say hi.
Yes, thank you so much, Mariana. I know I appreciate all of this conversation just in general, but all of these tools and tips were beautiful. So thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you. This was lovely, and thank you for having me. This was awesome.
All right, y'all, it is time for the quote of the episode. This quote is from Eli Cohen. The quote is, "Without continuous personal development, you are now all that you will ever be." Eli Cohen. Continue to own that you are a work in progress, and the development, learning, and growing, while super tough at times, is completely beautiful. Take that into your week, your month, maybe even your year, and start personally developing into the best version of you. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in my community. I'm so glad you showed up today, and let's go get there. Look at you, crushing it. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Tailor Made Tasty podcast. My hope is you always leave with a takeaway to implement in your own goal-crushing journey. I would love if you could take a moment to leave a review. And if you're looking for a community of goal boss badasses just like you, be sure to check out tailormadetasty.com/membership.